Here. Hello, everyone. Oh my gosh, there's so many people. This is so fun. Wow, 89 people so far. I'm going to give it a few minutes, of course, just to see who all ends up joining here. I just shared the link 2 more times on my Instagram story, so hopefully we'll get even more people. And Jidis, I'm not sure if you or Victoria have made me a host yet. Oh, it looks like I can share my screen. Oh, just kidding. It's disabled. You might have to make me a host. But the first thing I was going to say to everyone was, tell me where you're from. And just, yeah, so this is great. You guys are already doing that. So I'm just excited. Awesome. Very excited. Okay, I'm the host now, it looks like. Make sure I mute my phone here. You never know who's going to try and get a hold of me while I'm in the middle of teaching. Wow, over 100 people now. I mean, all over the place. We are worldwide, baby. So freaking fun. And I haven't met a lot of, I mean, maybe I've met some of you guys. Maybe you've joined a masterclass that I've done. Who knows? There's so many people, but maybe some of my students are here. Maybe people I've done readings for. I hope so, at least. And I'm going to go ahead and just get my screen kind of going here. Okay, so let me go ahead and hit share. Because I know I have a bit of a time limit here. So I want to make sure that I, have as much time possible. Let me get this chat going and then present. It's so weird. Usually I am. So let me tell you guys, I'm actually in my childhood home right now. I live in Southern California, but I'm from Southern Michigan, Southeast Michigan, Northwest Ohio, like Toledo, Ohio area, if any of you guys are familiar. And I'm visiting home right now because my cousin got married last week and my sister is pregnant and she also lives in Southern California, but she's here. We're doing a baby shower on Saturday. So it's just a fun time. But I'm in my childhood home and I grew up here and it's kind of cool just to be, here teaching. So my dad's going to get home from work here in a second. I had to send him a text and he usually gets home and he's like all excited with the dogs and makes all this noise. And so I was like, hey, I'm teaching. So if that happens, I did kind of lock the door and he can see me. So I was like, so hopefully that doesn't happen. But if it does, you guys, it's just real life here. But okay, just because of time, we're about 5 minutes over. I want to just go ahead and get started. There's so many of you that are continuing to join, and I know so many of you are going to be watching this from, I'm sure, YouTube or wherever this is located. So I'm just, happy to be here and talk about how to give a good human design reading. I think the formal title of this was like Mastering the Art of Human Design Readings. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So you guys already told me, where you're tuning in from. Continue to do that if you're, you still haven't chatted with us, but I'd love to hear, what you're most excited to learn about today. So feel free to put that in the chat. And Erin, I just saw your question. This will be recorded. You do have to get back to work. So yeah, no worries. This will be recorded so you guys can grab this. There is a giveaway that I'm going to be doing at the end. So if you can stick around or if you can pop back in, I definitely recommend that maybe towards like the end of the hour. So yeah, so love all the Midwest folks here. Hey, love it. Yep. Victoria is excited to see the cadence of how to best express this knowledge without overwhelming people, adding this to my offering. So excited to learn from you. That was from Tonya or Tanya. Been doing human design readings for years, but I like to explore other people's what other people's wisdom expresses in their reading. Yeah, okay, awesome. This is so fun. Continue to let me know where you guys are from and what you're excited to learn about. This will be available on YouTube and anyone watching, all of this content is owned by my my business, The Design of You. So please don't, obviously copy or, redistribute this information in any way. So this is just, kind of our legal thing that we put in all of our stuff that we do. So please, hold to that. Oopsies. Where did we go here? Okay, so our agenda today is I'm just going to explain who I am and a little bit about, what I do, and we're going to just dive into how to give a good human design reading. So we're going to be talking about prepping for a session, how to structure a reading and several types of readings too, group readings, partner, if you're doing like co-founder readings, um, couple relationships, all sorts of different types of readings. And we're also going to talk about how to read different aspects of a chart. And then we're going to talk about how you can read someone actually based on their chart. So diving into different aspects. If obviously you're prepping for a session, you see a part of their chart, and then you can, kind of prep your session or how you read them based on what you think they might be interested in. So that'll make more sense when we get there. And then I think one of my favorite parts is just talking about good reader practices. And then I mentioned at the beginning, I'm going to do a giveaway spot. So I teach a course called Human Design Mastery. It is a training certification program where I teach people, human design, and you can get certified and start doing this professionally. But I have a lot of people who go through it who are just like obsessed with human design and want to learn, or they've taken another course that wasn't like as wasn't their favorite course, and maybe they want to take another one, or you just want to take all of them because you're maybe a one line like I am and you just love learning. Or a lot of people who go through the course, they're just looking to integrate human design into something else that they do. So there's a lot of reasons why people join, but we're going to be doing a giveaway spot at the end because my fall round, I do 2 live rounds a year, and it is self-paced as well. You can kind of join whenever, but we do 1 to 2 live rounds a year. And so we have one coming up, and we have an early bird sale kind of going on for that starts Monday, but you guys are going to kind of get like someone's going to win a spot, and then you guys are going to get early access to that. So that's fun. And then I'll also offer some discount codes to some other things that we do, like the reports through Bodygraph chart and some other stuff. So so excited to see everyone joining here. Wow, we've got, let's see how many people so far. 129. I think there was like a lot that registered. So, oh, Crystal, hi. Oh my gosh, my girl Crystal, I just read your email to me. I haven't had a chance to reply yet. I'm excited to catch up with you. But okay, so let's dive into who I am. So I'm Leah. I'm a human design, educator, enthusiast. I honestly struggle with my title because I'm a human design reader, but I'm also like, an enthusiast. I educate, I teach, I am building a human design app. I'm writing a human design book. So I don't know what you want to call me. I just do human design. For a while, I was calling myself a human design expert, and sometimes people call me that, and sometimes they still do. But to be completely honest, sometimes it's like, I don't know if it's like the 7 one lines in me, but like that doesn't always feel like the most comfortable title because I feel like it's a forever, knowledge system. And I'm sure lots of you here tuning in probably feel the same way. So I don't know. I do human design in whatever capacity that is. Um, the thing I share with a lot of people, and maybe a lot of you guys have this story too, is that, when human design found me, it really changed my life. I knew that this was something that I needed to learn, and it really helped me like unbecome this version of me that I was living in. So like prior to what I do now, I was working this corporate, Fortune 500 job, was like climbing the ladder. I worked in tech, actually ran a development team. So kind of serendipitous of what we're working on now. But I lived, in the Midwest where I'm at right now, visiting home. And, I got into human design, and my whole life just changed. So many things that I was like wanting to manifest or wanting to make happen in my life, but like honestly couldn't figure out the steps, just kind of unfolded for me as I got into human design. And I think that happens to a lot of people. It's like once you start working with your energy, it just kind of starts to tumble over and just things show up. And so yeah, I just kind of fell in love and with it, and I love sharing the ins and outs. I always thought it would be something I did on the side as like on the side of my corporate job, like a little side hustle, if you will. Most of us in human design don't really love the word hustle. At least I've kind of removed that language from my um, vocabulary now, but that's really what I kind of saw it as, and it then turned into this. And so yeah, it really started with the one-on-one readings though, and I've been sharing full time since 2022. And if you'd like to hear my story, I do have a podcast the first episode is called My Human Design Story, and I go in great lengths about all the pieces and parts of it, and it's kind of cool. But my mission is really just to help break human design down, and so that way you can use it in your everyday life. And I think another big part of my mission outside of human design is just making spirituality practical, making being spiritually gifted, practical, and or normalizing that, because I think that our world is really shifting that way, which, as we all know, with the kind of shift that we're moving into. And to answer your question, Tracy, my podcast it's on Apple, it's on Spotify, it's called The Design of You. I actually excuse me, I released my last episode of my podcast last week. So we're going to be ending it, unfortunately. Maybe not forever, but just for the time being as I'm working on some other stuff. But I've got lots of episodes. You guys should totally dive in. I teach a lot on there. So yeah, maybe some of you guys found me that way. Oh, great question. My design. Usually I share this. So I am a 5-1 sacral generator. I feel like usually when I teach, people can tell I'm a generator right off the bat. Yeah, so 5-1 sacral generator. Born under gate 1, I've got a defined root, a defined sacral, a defined spleen, a defined heart center, a defined identity center. And then I've got an undefined solar plexus, an undefined throat, an undefined mind, ajna, undefined heart, or sorry, not heart, head. So yeah, those are just some things. I've got the channels 44 to 26, the 2 to 14, and the 3 to 60. So yeah, that's my chart. Okay, let's dive into things. So I have a business called The Design of You. We do a lot of things, and, Bodygraph Chart actually supports a lot of what I do. So thankful for Jittis and what, he's built here. So I mentioned the podcast, which is still available. You can listen to it, but we're not going to be releasing new episodes until, my sacral lets me know when that's time to come back. I have guidebooks, which are reports essentially through Bodygraph Chart. I teach a course called Human Design Mastery. As I mentioned, it's a reader training. We certify readers, and we do lots of things in there, which I'll talk about later. And then I have a reader network of, people who have gone through. Crystal, who just joined here. She's actually, listed right here on the page. But yeah, I have a reader network of people who went through HDM, who apply and go through this whole process to become listed on my website. And then I'm writing a book and I'm building an app. So all sorts of fun things. And that's a little bit about us. And there's, probably more that I'm missing, but my podcast is called The Design of You. Okay, so let's dive into giving readings. So there's a few things to know about giving human design readings. And I've got a bunch of things pulled up here, so I might kind of move this chat. You guys probably can't see me moving things around because I think it disables that in the share. But if you see my cursor all weird, it's just because I'm moving stuff around so I can see all the things. So first and foremost, as far as it goes with giving human design readings, there's a couple tips that I like to give. And a lot of this content that we're going through today is from a lesson I teach inside of HDM called, your human design practice and reading charts. A lot of it's not a part of what we're going to go through today, but it's definitely pulled from that. So if some of my students are here, you're probably I've already been through this. Okay, so first and foremost, it's easy to overwhelm people with human design information. How many of you have even just tried explaining human design to someone who didn't know what it was and they were completely just somewhere else? Me, I have that experience all the time where I am explaining human design, trying to just tell people about what I do. It is nice in the beginning when I got into human design back in 2017. There was always this moment of being I'm a spiritual life coach, or I'm a, consultant. I never knew what to call myself. And honestly, I still, you guys saw, struggle with that. But what's nice now is that, a lot of people know what human design is, but back then it was not only am I explaining what I do for a job, what's my day-to-day, life but also I have to explain what human design is, and it can get a little bit tricky. So it's very easy to overwhelm people with the information. And so a big part of what I like to do is just kind of break it down, in the beginning when I started human design readings, and if any of you guys are just getting into this or just in the beginning, don't feel shamed for this at all. But I used to jam pack my sessions with info, and I had this super rigid schedule, and I'll kind of walk you guys through what my sort of, timeline or schedule is when I do readings. But I used to jam them pack with just or jam pack them full of things. And they weren't great, I would be wanting to kind of move through all the content, make sure they got everything they needed. But at the end of the day, what I realized is that people weren't really making changes in their life, or really wasn't hitting them in the way that they needed. And so again, back to point one, it's just really easy to overwhelm people. And sometimes it's better to, you know, move through a few things that are really going to land and make sure they're, you know, comprehending what you're sharing. I think that that's a lot more important than, you know, having it just like full of the most amount of information. So, you know, like then to this point number 4 is like the most important thing is that people can integrate the information that they receive. And you know, often the thing to know is that like integrating is the most important thing, because that's, if they're receiving the right information at the right time, it can really make a difference. So quality over quantity all day long in a reading. I have sort of like an intuitive way that I flow, which I'll mention in a little bit, but you know, and again, just kind of the reminder, like if you overwhelm people with information, they're going to walk away and forget everything you said. So integration, understanding, and that's, you know, the kind of best thing you can do. You know, some more things, it's just your job's to hold space and provide useful information for people, not to overwhelm them or tell them how to live. Give them the authority, right? Human design returns the authority to us. It's one of the powers of working with human design. So it's so important to, you know, give people that space. We're going to talk a little bit later about how you can, you know, move through things in a way. I actually don't think I have a slide on this, but I want to just kind of reference later about, you know, how to have boundaries, things that are appropriate to say or not to say within sessions. We're also going to talk about, you know, if someone brings up something sensitive in a session, what to do. Those are some things that I've had to learn through the years of giving human design readings. But, you know, the best sessions are empowering. They're full of tools that people can use in their everyday life, you know, giving lots of reflection questions. I'm a homework type person. I love in a session just saying like, okay, here's some homework for you. Here's something that you should try. Obviously, totally optional. People have willpower to do whatever they want. So I'm very much just like, I like to give people tangible things. Here's a book you should read. I think you'd love this. Here's a quote. Like, I just love to give people little things to take away. And I think that that's really great. And, you know, as far as like the convincing thing, I think in the beginning too, when I was doing human design, people just wanted to support me. And so even if they didn't know what human design was, and this was more like family and friends, going back to like the explaining the human design part was a little bit hard in the beginning. And so I found that I used to spend a lot of time just convincing people like it's the system and this is how it came to be and yada, 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 yada. And honestly, like that's just, no one really cares. They just want to hear about themselves. And so the more space you allow for them to explore human design on their own and just like kind of hear about themselves, that will actually open the doors for them to maybe ask questions later about like, how did human design come to be? And again, like remember you're giving a human design reading. So unless you're a licensed therapist or in emotional health, you're a doctor, any other thing, you know, just be very intentional about how you share things. Okay, so you know, and when can I start giving human design readings? Okay, this is pulled from my HDM course, so apologies for the first one. You know, my course does cover the knowledge required to give human design readings, which you guys probably have taken courses. And, you know, the way you share this information though, or begin giving readings is entirely up to you. Everyone has like a different timeline when this slide probably could have been pulled out, but I'll just go through it. But practice is really essential. Like I mentioned in the beginning, human design is a forever learning system. So, you know, always keep learning. Embodiment's key. Really work with your design. In the beginning, when I started giving human design readings, I mean, like I was doing it way before I was fully embodied in my design. But, you know, I learned a lot in that time period. And I think you can still give a great reading without fully embodying it. But I feel like once you do, it really makes a difference. So the more you embody your design and practice sharing it with people, the deeper and more impactful your sharing becomes. And, you know, my recommendation is to begin when your foundation feels really strong, which may mean, you know, going through modules, sessions, recordings once, 2, 3 times or more. But honestly, just like trust your own process and take all the time you need. And this is something that one of my human design teachers told me, and it really just made a difference. So, I mentioned like I kind of started giving readings right away as I was learning. I took my experience with human design as like I tried to teach myself when I got into it, and then slowly realized it's super complex and I needed to enroll in a training. So I did a training, and kind of alongside that, I was, you know, doing mini readings for friends over wine. I always joked it was like my party trick, but it was very much the, you know, oh, I'm in this thing about I'm doing this certification or this training, learning human design, I'd love to pull up your chart. I just always made it fun. It was just, I didn't really think it'd become what it is now. So, but my friends always knew me as like this astrology girl. So there really wasn't a big surprise, but um, yeah, like, so I just kind of did it right away. So really it's up to you. But in the beginning, my readings were so very basic. And again, family, friends of friends, and people weren't really paying me in the beginning. And when I did start charging, it was very little, which that's a whole other conversation I'm not going to get into today. I'm sure there's webinars on, pricing readings or setting up your human design business. I think I saw some. But yeah, the more I did, the more comfortable I became, and the knowledge really began to stick with me. And I learned, how different things show up in people's lives. So I really loved that period of time because I was learning, and then I'd be in a session and I'd share basically verbatim from like a training or something I read how a certain aspect of a chart showed up. And then that person would then say to me, like, oh yeah, I've had this experience. And so something that I thought was really important, and I tell my students this a lot, is have like an ongoing document of every single aspect in human design. And as you're in a session, take notes of what people say, how they relate to things. So I remember I was reading with a friend and I was telling her about her line 3. And she said to me, I've always learned the hard way. And it was like like she said that in a way like, I've always just learned the hard way. It was like a giggly sort of thing, just we laughed, and we've been friends for a long time. So it was just funny, but that really stuck with me. And now when I teach about third lines, I always say, threes learn the hard way, but that's the best way for them. That's the only way they'd like to learn, it's like the way that they do it best. And that's how it is. And so, you kind of you learn these little things as you're working with people, you pick up information, you hear analogies, and, they're really, the things that I think have really changed my readings the most and my training. So, um, so yeah, so I learned a lot about myself, learned a lot about how different pieces show up. And, as I learned and the more I embodied my own design, it became easier and second nature and honestly fun. My readings have evolved so much from the beginning. I mean, I don't have to prep as much right now for readings. I still do, depending, but for the most part, like it's pretty easy for me to look at a chart and just kind of move through it because it's, kind of second nature at this point. Now, I don't recommend you just jumping into a reading without looking at a chart at all prior, but it just becomes more fun and it becomes more second nature. It's like, I'll say later, but like practice makes perfect, right? Okay. So I want to talk about prepping for a session, and something that I do for all of the in-house readers that I have. We have this like portal, and we've got all these resources, and this is actually pulled from a lot of the things that I share with my readers as like, hey, this is how you should prep for a session. These are just things to remember. And I want to share these with you guys today because I think when I was first getting into human design, I really wanted something like this. I wanted there to be a structure, and I always kind of felt like I was going into readings, not really sure if I was doing a good job or not, but so these are just some great tips. So as always, how can I get someone's birth time? If I have a lot of human design readers here, you guys always know that, like you guys already know this stuff in general, but, getting someone else's birth time doesn't have to be so hard in this day and age. Most people know it like their social security number, but if the person you're trying to get it from does not, here's some tips. Of course, like it's on your birth certificate, the long form. Many people don't have a birth certificate or maybe have lost it. So, or if it's just not listed, you can ask someone present at your birth, perhaps your mom if she's still here, or someone else. Timestamps on old photos and videos. We have like baby videos of when I was born. It used to be like a party when you were born back in the day. And I have this like home video, and there's all these timestamps. So it's kind of cool to see. There's also astrologers that specialize in chart recertification, and obviously if you don't know the time, unfortunately the reading won't be accurate, but for the most part, energy type stays consistent throughout the day, and some other pieces and parts. So you can kind of play around with times to see. And one of the softwares out there, I think it's Maya Mechanics, is really great about showing you like how close you are to something changing. And I love what you said. Yeah, practice makes progress. Perfect is never, perfect is unattainable. So practice makes progress. I like that. Okay, so Several days before a session, look up someone's chart. Someone will book with you. I'm sure all of you guys have a software that you use, so like Acuity or Calendly. I actually believe I just saw like 2 days ago on Google Calendar, you can set up like a Stripe payment integration, and there's all sorts of different calendar things. So, you'll get someone's information at the beginning or several weeks or days before, look up their chart. And if you're like me, I have an intake form that asks the birth information, and then I ask a few questions. Some of the things I ask are, have you had a human design reading before? That just gives me insight into, okay, is this like a first time experience or not? Are you working with your strategy and authority? And some people will say yes. And then I ask a question that's, what's your level of understanding? Like beginner, like totally don't know anything, or I'm advanced. And my favorite part is a lot of people when they book, they'll say like, I'm intermediate or advanced human design. And then the question of, are you working with your strategy and authority will come up, and they'll say like, I don't know what that is. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe you're not intermediate or advanced, but that's really fine because we'll go through it in a session. And then I usually just ask, is there anything you're moving through? Is there anything you really want to talk about today? Like, is there an aspect of the chart? So are you really wanting to talk about your digestion, or are you really just wanting to kind of get a foundational session on your human design chart? And then I always just leave like an optional if there's anything else you want me to know. And that usually guides me as how I want to do a session. I'll go through those several days before and just kind of get a taste of what I'm going to be working with, whether it's like someone moving through a career change or relationship change. I just did a reading earlier today, and the girl that I was doing a reading for, she was in this kind of pivotal position right now of, transitioning from being a stay-at-home mom to going back to work. So that was a big part of what we talked about, people starting businesses, or just like someone wanting to look at their newborn's chart or something fun like that. Take notes, of course. We have a study guide template in HDM, that's what that is. But, take notes. Obviously, you can print out someone's chart, write things that really stand out, start to see themes within the chart. It's obviously a synthesis of so many things. Hopefully you guys can't hear that. Sounds like someone's like sawing next door. Start to just see themes within the chart. Oh wow, this person is like probably creative. Like if you look at my chart, there's a lot of creativity themes. I've got born under gate 1. I have lots of individual circuitry. I've got the 44 to 26 channel. So there's like different pieces you can start to pull out of someone's design and start to kind of map a story before you even get to know them. So really take notes and, start to put stuff together. And I think in the beginning, when I started doing human design, something that was really important for me is, studying a piece that you're not sure about. Like I remember the ego, heart, willpower center being one that just wasn't sticking with me. And also the spleen was another one at one point where those were two areas that I felt like took me a minute to really comprehend. And so, as I was prepping for a session, and if I saw someone had a defined spleen or like a wide open spleen, I remember, reminding myself, okay, I really want to, make sure I'm studying that piece. Another thing too, which I'll mention in a little bit, but I guess I'll just say it now too, is I always noticed if I didn't know something about a certain aspect of a chart, I noticed I would try to avoid that in a session. Like I wouldn't want to talk about it, or I would talk about other things. I wouldn't dive into those pieces. And I would always hope like, oh man, I hope they don't ask me a question about this because I'm not confident. So those are always just keys of like the things that you don't know a lot about within a chart. So those are always just great ways to, just kind of see where you're at with human design, and then use those as your guideposts to study more. Like, so after a session, make sure you're, going and rereading that lesson or opening up your definitive book of human design and just kind of refreshing your knowledge. So that way, you're starting to kind of get things to stick. Obviously, before the session, send a Zoom link. If you book on most of those like calendar integrations, I think a Zoom link or a Google Meets or whatever, video thing you're using, those will go up. Or those will send out. Sorry, I was like reading one of these messages. Okay, you guys can't hear. I thought you meant you can't hear me at first. I saw Merritt's comment. I was like, wait, no. Okay. So right before a session, find a quiet space. I think it's so important to do a reading somewhere that's like it's not loud, not in a coffee shop. Silence your phone. You guys saw me do that in the beginning. Pull their chart and the notes up that you took beforehand. I always send a copy of my client's chart to them, right? Like either via email or I'll put it in the chat of our Zoom. So that way they can follow along. I don't share my screen just because my notes are usually on my computer. So I'm actually reading off my notes, but some people share their screen and kind of move through things. Sometimes I'll like share and unshare, that kind of thing, whatever works for you. If they don't have the Zoom link, you can obviously resend that. Put headphones in if you have them, and then yeah, join Zoom, hit record, and boom, baby, you're ready to go. And then, so during a session in the beginning, how I frame my sessions is, kind of just getting a temperature check of, hello, how's your day? Where are you located? I oftentimes will ask how to pronounce their name if it's something that I don't know how to pronounce, and I'll kind of say who I am and where I'm located. I think the most important thing is to confirm someone's birth time. A story back in the beginning of when I was getting into human design, I did a reading for one of my like old coworkers who's a good friend of mine now. And we did a full reading and I sent her notes on her chart. And at the top of the notes that I took, I wrote her birth time. And after I sent her her notes, she was like, wait, you got my birthday wrong. And so we did a whole reading that was completely wrong. And so that wasn't a good experience. And I was mortified and embarrassed, and it was just not fun. So I always, ever since then, I join a session, and the first thing I say is, like, what is your birth time? Like, let me confirm your birth time. Let me make sure this is good. And that way it's just sort of like a temperature check on that. So if there's any questions you have about their intake form, I think that's important. If you do one, is it like, can you explain this? Or you had a human design reading before, how did it go? Tell me about that. I always just kind of like to reference the form just to hear if there's any more details that they didn't want to type out, if there's anything they want to add. And then I always think it's great to give an agenda. I did that at the beginning of this, just say, okay, so we're going to move through these pieces of your chart. Usually this is when I'd say, I really want to talk about this aspect, and then we're going to move through here, and then we'll just flow and see what comes up. And then oftentimes I let people know it's recorded. You can see in Zoom if it is. And yeah, someone's 5 line setting expectations. This is very much what I do, is like I like to set a lot of expectations, but I will let them know, hey, this is recorded. That way, because I've noticed before when I don't say that, someone will, instead of really listening to me, they're just obsessed with taking notes. And so I'll just say, hey, this is recorded. I'm going to be sending you notes later, but feel free, like if that's a part of your process, go ahead and take some notes if that's just what works for you. But otherwise, like, this will be recorded. So just do whatever is a part of your process. And then we dive into the session in whatever way that we want to go. And then, at the end of a session, you'll flow through the information. We're going to talk about what to put in kind of the middle here in a second. But at the end of a session, I always ask, like, I leave about 5 minutes. Do you have any questions for me? Is there anything that like didn't make sense to you? And also another tip here is just along the way, as I'm going through content, I always stop. Like the second I go through energy type, I'll say, does this make sense to you? Is there anything that was confusing? Especially after I talk about strategy and authority. The authority piece is always, a little bit confusing as the like wait for something. I think that can trip people up, and how that kind of comes together and works in a marriage. So I oftentimes say, does this make sense? This is the most important part. Just want to make sure this really lands. And, just stopping along the way and making sure people are still with you, and that maybe even they feel room to ask questions. Because again, in the beginning, when I was giving readings, I was jam packing all of my sessions full of information. And so I was like, I couldn't even catch my breath, because I'm sitting here pouring all this information into someone. And then at the end, they're like, yeah, this is really good. This is really interesting. And I don't even know what questions I have because I don't even know what I just heard. So definitely stop along the way. And, as always, like, thank people for their time. Remind them what they can expect from you. If you do a certain thing after, what I do is I always send an email, usually right away, but sometimes I'm running to another meeting or something like that, or I've got to run to somewhere. So I always do at least within like 12 to 24 hours. So I'll usually say, hey, I'm going to send you the audio recording that I took of this. I'm going to send you, I don't know, sometimes if I recommended a book, or if I recommended sometimes I pull cards for people. I'll pull an oracle card, or I do psychic mediumship work, not a part of human design, but like every now and again, something will come through. And so I'll usually just send something along the way, a discount code also to book another reading or to another offering of mine if, they mentioned that. So I just think that's a good practice, and I'll give you guys more good and bad practices later. Yeah, that's kind of it so far. I'm going to pause real quick because I just saw some questions come through. So this knowledge is gold. Thank you for sharing, of course. And what do you do if it turns out the birth time is wrong? Do you postpone the reading as you prep notes? Or do you have the whole reading on the spot? So I'm going to be honest, like I don't ever feel like I fully get it wrong anymore. The only time is because I'll triple check, but I always just ask too, because this has happened in the past where someone's entered it wrong. So what I would do in that case is if I, right after I asked, is this your birth time? And if they were like, oh no, that's not it. And I looked up their chart, if it was pretty similar, like if it was just a few minutes off or a couple hours, their chart's relatively going to be the same. So I'll usually continue with the session. But if it's like wildly different, like we got the month or the day or something wrong, or like totally, opposite ends of the day, and a lot of things change, then I probably would just say, I'm so sorry. Like I have to postpone this. If it was my fault, like if I typed it in wrong and I just read it the wrong way, then I would throw something in. I'd add in an extra, 30 minutes, or I'd offer like a discount, refund a percentage, offer something that just made sense. So it's totally up to you. We used to sell necklaces. I used to send necklaces to people when things like that happened, or, something just, to make them feel like you care about their time. People look forward to readings. And that's something important to remember too, is like, even though this is kind of a lot of our day jobs, it's important to know, like when people book with you, it's an investment, and also they look forward to it. Like if they booked it one day and it was 2 weeks ago, like for those 2 weeks, they're talking about it. They can't wait to meet with you. You have no idea too, like the way that they're inspired by you or your story. So, or, maybe they're at a dark place and this is like something they're really just like looking forward to pull them out of that. So always just respect time and make sure that people are excited to, or make sure that people are kind of getting what they ask for, I guess. Alice asked, should you ask their job or profession? Solely up to you. I sometimes do if I'm moving through their chart. Like if I see a theme, I did a reading yesterday, and the girl that I was reading for, which I knew based on her intake form, she talked about her being a teacher. And then she, for about 10 minutes, told me this really cool story about the trajectory of her life and how she is, has had all these positions really as like a leader and a teacher. And I couldn't believe it. Like she was born under, it wasn't Kate 17. What was she born under? Whatever. I don't even have to get into the specifics, but she had so many parts of her chart that just were all about authority and leadership. It was gate 45 she was born under. And it was like just such a big part of her. She was a projector. And, so if she didn't tell me those things, I probably at one point would say, what do you do for work? Your chart is full of just this leadership teacher energy. And so, that's always fun when, that's what they do, or, it's related to something that they do. Okay. I'm going to move along. I know there's a couple more questions that came through, so we'll just move through, and then I'll make sure to get everyone's questions at the end too. So, after a session, I already mentioned this, I send a follow-up email. Oh yeah, so there's a template under, things that I have for my people in HDM. And, always add a little flair in your, your email you send, like a little personal touch. A lot of times people share really amazing stories with me, really beautiful things. People cry, you guys have probably all had these experiences. And so, obviously just add something that, just something that you felt through the session. I think that just means a lot. And yeah, and I always recommend asking for feedback. I have a feedback form that I include in my follow-up email. It goes to a Google form. Not everyone fills it out, but I usually just say like, I'd love to hear your feedback. It means so much to me, good or bad, anything. Like I can only get better. And that's honestly how I'm able to even teach this right now, is because of all the things that, didn't go well, right? Okay, so factors that impact how you structure a session. So we're gonna move into like how to structure things and stuff like that. So as far as, this goes, there's a lot of different things that can lean into how you structure things. So like your level of human design expertise, the level of, your clients, like what journey they're on with human design, whether they're brand new, maybe they're like, I'm just doing this because I'm a friend and I want to support you, or if they're like, they've been doing human design for years. There's so many different things. Their age and generation, that's going to be a big thing. Like I've had younger, people who are like a younger generation. Like I've worked with high schoolers right out of high school, college, and a totally different reading than someone who is, 50, 60 plus years old. Like totally two wildly different experiences, or just like, around their Saturn return and their 20s and their 30s. Like everyone's going to have different experiences. So those are just ways that you can think about how to structure a session, right? The receptivity to spiritual language and practices. So like maybe if someone is more like spiritual, maybe that's something you're picking up on. Maybe you can say more things about like, yeah, and this is combined with astrology, and lean on some of the more like ancient materials within human design. You can maybe even mention like feminine versus masculine, just like saying more of those things. Or if you're doing a reading for someone like, I don't know, like my dad, where I probably wouldn't say much of that because he'd be like, I don't even know what you're saying. You know what I mean? So it just totally depends on who you're doing a reading for. And then of course, like if they ask a lot of questions or if they just want to listen, I have people who, my favorite sessions are the ones that are conversational personally. But some people just want to sit back and listen. And I think one thing that I could add here is if someone is like interested in learning human design, or if they don't want any part of the human design language. What I mean by that is, if you're doing a session for someone, like if I was getting a human design reading for the first time, which this was the experience I had when I first had a human design reading, I told the girl that was doing my reading, I was like, I really want to do this someday. And so she totally educated me along the way. And I was like, what does this like shape mean? And what do these numbers mean? And I was just like, bombarding her with questions. And so that was fun for me. But I totally have had experiences where I'm doing a session for someone and I start to maybe get a little technical, and then I can tell I'm losing them a little bit. So then I have to go back to just generally speaking. So an example of that would be, instead of saying like, okay, wow, you have got gate 5, and gate 5 is all about rhythms and finding this like kind of routine within your life. Like instead of saying gate 5 and speaking directly about gate 5 and the planet it's placed in, you might just talk about, hey, I can see in your chart, you might be more keen to having some sort of routine in your life. And I can see, and you don't have to say where, how, what, like you don't have to say where that's coming from. And it's totally dependent on the person, because again, someone like me would be like, where are you seeing that and how? And then someone else might be like, I don't care, I'm never going to be a human design reader. So that can impact the way you structure a session. And then of course, your design, how you like to show up, and then their design, right? So this is how I begin my session. So I kind of already went through this, but I get to know each other, weather, location, how are you feeling today, review their questionnaire. If I'm a generator, I like to have something to respond to. And I also can see where they're at as far as like, is this an expert, or is this someone who, again, has never heard of human design, or somewhere in the middle? Explore how deep their human design knowledge is. I oftentimes ask like, hey, I'd love to hear like what your journey has been with human design. I think that would really help me. And that usually helps me kind of frame the session as well. I usually tell them, this is what I care about in a reading. This is, my approach, which they probably already know if they booked a reading with me, right? And then again, the agenda, people like to know what to expect, remind them it's being recorded, and then, yeah. So I use my guidebooks is what I call them, or reports as they're formally called within Bodygraph Chart's website. You can use those as a framework. So back when I started doing human design readings, I put something together called the chart summary, which was the notes that I took. So I mentioned in the beginning, I was taking notes on people's charts, and I would just send them my notes after. And so I called them chart summaries. I was doing this on the side of my corporate job. And this is like honestly how human design became my full-time thing, is because I started selling what I called chart summaries on Etsy. And they're very basic and just like a few pages. And then I created a more in-depth version that I sold on Etsy as well. Maybe some of you guys have them. Honestly, if you do, like, let me know, because we have guidebooks now and they're a million times better than whatever I was doing back then. But yeah, so fall of 2022, I had this massive overhaul and just kind of changed them, made them the guidebook. I wanted them to be a lot more like workbooky style, a lot more practical with tips and checklists and Mad Libs and all sorts of fun things. And I put those together, and then I found Bodygraph Chart, and I was like, wait, how can I like use this to implement this and make it easier for me? and it's been, amazing. So thank you, Jidis and Victoria and the entire team. I'm just like so thankful for you guys, honestly. But what I do every single session, I use the software and I pull up a guidebook. I don't always send the guidebooks to people because like that's a purchase they have to make, but a lot of them do as well. But I always kind of use that as my framework, and that's the way that I move through each person's chart. And so, that's what you guys can do too. Okay, so how to structure a reading. So the way you move through content is entirely up to you. I always cover the foundations and then we'll add what's relevant based on what's going to be supportive for the client or not. If they're talking about purpose, I might talk about, I might talk about purpose with them, right? I might talk about their incarnation cross. I might talk about, some of their channels. Do you guys see like my aura going like this right now? I just think that's really interesting. Anyway, maybe it's like a spirit or something. But this is the general flow of how I think I would move through things. So foundation, so energy type, strategy, authority, signature theme, not self theme, profile, definition. And then if they're more intermediate, I would then maybe go into undefined centers, defined centers, channels, incarnation cross gates. And then if they're advanced, we dive into variable. As you guys know, or maybe you don't know, but you should know, if you're reading variable, a lot of them don't apply till after the age of 30. A lot of them are like super unfamiliar in the beginning. They can feel very like they're sometimes not the most digestible thing. But again, it like totally depends. You can kind of gauge that through the intake form or working with them. And some people just will ask questions about those things too. So we'll talk about that as well. So let's start with like a level 1 foundational reading. I don't know, you don't have to call it level 1, basic reading, a first time reading, whatever you guys have as your structure. This is just sort of like the first beginning reading that I do. This is most of the readings you'll do, if not 95% of them. Very rarely do I feel like I get a reading with someone who's like very advanced or like usually this is what we're doing. So this covers the basics of someone's human design. This is what the majority of the sessions, again, are going to be covering. So, so someone who's getting their first human design reading, new to human design, still learning the basics, or who is not in their not self theme. So if they're frustrated, bitter, angry, disappointed, if they're feeling a lot of those themes, this is going to be where you start. Even if someone claims they know a lot about their human design, I feel like it's helpful to still cover the foundations, just because hearing it in a different way always helps it land. I've done readings before for people who have had human design readings, and then I explain energy type, strategy, and authority, and there's something that really landed for them. And we spent like the whole time doing that, even though they already had another reading. But it's like, that's what I meant in the beginning. Like you kind of intuitively will see what people need, and the conversation will hopefully flow, and things you'll kind of move with what feels right. But comprehension and really making sure they're integrating is important. So, and oftentimes people don't realize, or they don't know as much as they think they do sometimes, you never know. So in one of these readings, I would cover definitely everything listed here: energy type, strategy, authority, signature theme, not self theme, and then profile, definition, and then maybe undefined or defined centers. I know a lot of people are asking me some questions in here. You guys are so sweet. I just saw you guys saying, I noticed your aura is glowing. I'm going to stop because there's so many here, and I know we'll get even more later. So let me spend some time answering these before I move on. Okay, so do you share with clients a PDF with their chart and content from the reading? Yes and no. So in the beginning I did, and I would do those chart summaries. And now I have something called the guidebook. I don't offer guidebooks in readings unless someone bought one. So that's totally up to you. And you totally could. I think it's really helpful. How long does it take to give a reading? I give 60-minute readings. I know a lot of people do 90-minute readings, 100% up to you. I just like doing 60 minutes. I think 90 minutes, I kind of like, I've done 90 minutes in the past and I'm ready to go. I kind of feel like I don't want to, like, I'm just ready to be done at 60 minutes. Personally, that's just what works for me. But I know some people who feel like it's too much information for 60 minutes. So it's like however you flow. And they can always book a second session. And like I offer a discount. So after you book a reading with me, I send you an email with the follow-up and I give you a unique 20% off code to book a future session, or they can use that to gift a session to someone else. So people will just book more with me, like to get to talk more. And you could really go through someone's chart for hours, right? Nicole said, do you ever follow up readings to go more in depth? Only if there was something that I feel like we couldn't get to due to time or something else. Or if there's something that I thought of later. I don't know. It just depends, like case by case basis. I had someone the other day or this wasn't the other day, this was like in June, but a couple months ago. And she and I did a reading and her baby was due next week. She was pregnant with her first baby. And I was like, send me the birth time after you have the baby. And so she sent me the birth time a couple weeks ago. Finally, and she's like, I haven't had a chance to get to you, but I had my baby. And so then, I sent like a whole thing over to her just because, why not? And it was just fun. Patricia said, I did 90 minutes and I feel like me and the client are both exhausted. So I switched to 60 minutes. Yeah, like totally depends. Lori said she does 2 hours. It totally is like whatever works for you. Some of the girls that are listed, like that are in my reader network, so you can do these add-ons. And I think a lot of these calendar integrations make it really easy, but Acuity has these add-ons you can do. And so we add on, I'll add on or they'll do an add-on. Oh my God, I'm like jumbling my words right now. And you can add time. So I think Crystal does it where if you want to do like an oracle card pull or something, you can add like 15 minutes with her and then it'll charge like an additional $5 or $15, whatever her like limit is. So you could do stuff like that. Okay, yeah, Crystal just said like if you do a partner or a child, it adds on time and you can even add on additional money too. So there's also like some options like that. Alice said, so when you're giving a reading, is it mostly just relaying and reading out what you would write in a chart summary? Yeah, I mean, yes and no. It's usually a synthesis. Like I said, if I saw someone like the girl I gave a reading for yesterday, who is very much a teacher in so many ways, that wasn't specifically leaning on like one aspect of her chart. It was like all these different aspects. And so we talked about that, and that was like a synthesis of a lot of things. So I mean, obviously, like if you're talking about someone being a certain energy type, like that could be something that's definitely kind of in its own bucket, but then you'll synthesize that throughout so many of the other pieces too. But let's dive into more of this because I think it might answer some more of the questions that come up. And you know what I just realized? Hopefully my battery lasts, so we'll just see. I have to go grab my charger. I didn't plug in my computer, which was dumb of me, but I'll go get that in a minute. Okay, so let's dive into a level 2 reading. So this would be like, intermediate. This would briefly cover the basics and then dive deeper into centers, channels, incarnation, cross, maybe gates. So this is for someone who's maybe already had a human design reading, is working with their strategy and authority, and like is in alignment with their signature theme. So feeling satisfaction, success if they're a projector, peace if they're a manifestor, or surprise if they're a reflector. These will vary in structure, and you may spend a lot of time talking about strategy and authority and then deep dive into like one gate or a couple channels, or just spending the entire time on centers. I find these are the ones that kind of go all over. I've had people book a reading with me and they're like, I just want to know all about my gates. I want to know what planets they're in. I want to know the gate lines. I want to know what it means if it's on a defined versus undefined center. So we will just spend the whole time diving into that. And that's fun. That's what they wanted. Whereas like, I wouldn't do that with someone who's having a first time reading because they'd be like, wait, what am I supposed to do with this? So here are some things you can do in one of those sessions. You guys can pause to, or this is not being recorded. I'm like in the middle of like re-recording all of my slides for HDM. So I'm like, you guys can pause and read this, but so energy type, strategy, authority, signature theme, not self-theme, profile, definition, undefined centers, defined centers, channels, incarnation, cross gates. And then in advanced reading, this will kind of go briefly over the basics and then definitely some of the intermediate pieces that we just talked about, and then deeper into the variables. So this is for someone who's had multiple human design readings, who's been working with the strategy and authority for at least a year, maybe someone who just knows a lot about human design over the age of 30, because as you know, a lot of those more important, more in-depth variable pieces, or not, I wouldn't say is more important, but those pieces are for people who are after their Saturn return. So these are some things you may want to go into. So yeah, like these are the ones that I spend a lot of time, like also in particular spots as well. Sometimes these are like teaching sessions for me too. So these are, deeper information into all the basics, and then almost always we're diving into variable and an advanced reading. That's almost the point of it. So I'm going to talk about giving group readings, but guys, let me really quickly just go grab my charger and plug it in. I will be right back. I just don't want to, lose you guys. Hold on. Okay, we are back. Sorry about that. Okay, let's dive into group reading. So structuring a group reading. Group readings can be subjective to the dynamic. So obviously, like if you're working with couples or if you're working with a family or like a small team versus a big team. However, the general flow will be focused on the foundations and the basics, and you most likely will not have time to go deep. And often that will overwhelm people. Hold on, I feel like I'm out of breath from running inside. Okay. um, so steps to structure a group reading. So first you want to get everyone's birth info prior to, the reading. So if you're working with a team, getting that like through whoever booked the, team reading with you, working with a family, anything, look up their charts, just like you would do for everything, just kind of like do it for more people. Understand the foundations of everyone's design. The foundations, I call this the big three in human design, which is the energy type strategy, authority, and profile. I think those are kind of really great pieces to start with. And I think definition's also really great for groups of people. In fact, like one of the more important things. So definitely like prioritize that. And then in the session, focus on explaining the usefulness of human design. So this isn't a time to like, convince people of human design. It's more so just to say like, hey, we're doing, this is what human design is. And this is what you can expect to learn today about yourself, how to work with your energy, how to make decisions with your energy. Maybe you'll learn a little bit about your coworker or, your friend or your sibling. And then, just explain the foundations of everyone's chart. Definitely, again, touch on definition. And then if there's any like important call outs, like maybe you see like someone's a quad right and then everyone else is a quad left, right? Or something that like maybe there's one emotional in the family and then the rest is unemotional, or maybe they're like all emotional and one's unemotional. So those are just like some things you may just notice, maybe take some notes on just some stuff that you notice as like the dynamics. So this is my flow. So I introduced, the human design, the flow of the session. I'll share each person's type, so who's similar or not, each person's strategy and authority, the different alignment themes, ways to support each other's strategy and authority, each person's definition. This is always, again, fun, as I mentioned. Who's more independent? Who doesn't even want to be on the team, right? Who like really likes to collaborate, and that's just fun. So share who has like a harmonious or even the resonant profile. So either the same profile, or you can even share like, 2 4s and 5 1s are harmonious, and so on and so forth. So there's some, you can kind of go through that. And then maybe you can even touch on channels, just to mention some people's like core gifts. For a small team, this is called a Penta. So this is like a, small group reading. If you guys aren't familiar with Penta charts, BG5 in human design teaches this. I teach parts of this inside of HDM, but there's other courses that exist that go into this. But when you look up a Penta, you'll actually, it takes 16 gates that are a part of a chart, and they're actually called skills within the Penta. So the channels between the throat and the identity center, and the identity and the sacral. And so we kind of look at all of those to see like what skills someone has and brings to a team, and or what skills the team doesn't have. So in this flow, I'll briefly do everything I just said in the group session, and then I'll bring up the skills. But usually I'm not going through like, oh, this person's better at this or this person's better at that. It's usually more so looking at, okay, it looks like a lot of people, we've got a lot of like executive planners on this team, or we've got a lot of people who are, really good at marketing. But, it looks like we're kind of missing a gap here where there could just be something that to discuss as a team and where they could get help and things like that. But sometimes I don't even dive into a Penta. In fact, all of the team readings I did up until recently, before I learned about Penta, were not even focused on that. I was just doing the basics: energy type, strategy, authority, definition, profile. And that was perfect. People gain so much and usually only have like an hour or two. So that's pretty much as far as you'll get to anyway. And then there's bigger teams, which is called OC 16, Organizational Circuit 16. Totally different things, usually more focused on like executive functioning, so leadership within a team. But I don't cover that in this today because that's pretty rare. You'll do something like that. But we do cover that in Human Design Mastery. But yeah. And then business partners, co-founder reading. So this is fun. I've done quite a few of these. This is just looking at two people who are either starting a business together, founding something, or who work really closely together. Like I did this at one point for someone who was hiring, an admin or an assistant, just to see, how their kind of dynamic flowed. I don't recommend hiring people based on their human design in full. I usually recommend hiring them based on your authority, and then you can dive into their chart later to learn how to support them. But you could want to pull a connection chart for this one. If you're not familiar with connection charts, we have a course on that. And so you can pull this and just kind of see the dynamics between their chart. So definition connection, channel connection, center connection. But then you'll also just want to talk about like the basics, the big three with them too. Couple of readings is pretty much the same thing as like a business partner, but then you'll definitely want to be talking about like circuitry of channels, profile compatibility. And usually like these are sessions where I'm very much just giving tools to move through parts of the chart to support each other. Lots of space for shares. Lots of reminders you're not a counselor. I've had a couple of readings before where people are like definitely like getting into like something that like was pressing within their relationship. And I'm like, okay, let's move on to the next thing. I don't mean to, open up a fight here, but yeah, but that's pretty rare. For the most part, couple readings are pretty fun. And I find people just feel like there's so much, love within each other through those. So, okay, no, we're close on time here, but I have so much to go through. And so we go through each of the, we're going to go through each of the aspects of a chart and just how to read that, starting with energy type. So when reading someone's energy type, you'll want to highlight, the gift of what their type is, how their energy feels to others. So like the aura, some common misunderstandings or challenges associated with their energy type, and their greatest lesson to overcome challenges. Example, like for, projectors, it's like leaning into rest, right? For generators, it's like not overcommitting to things that they don't actually love to do. This is the most, crucial part, and I think you should spend a lot of time there. Strategy, you'll want to highlight, how their strategy works with their type. So a manifestor, you get a burst of ideas and you'll want to go after them right away. So it's helpful to inform people first before you do so. Real life examples I think are really great with strategy, and then just potential challenges with the strategy, like, waiting for a recognition or the invitation. Like, what are challenges with that? Authority. So you'll want to talk about how that's in a marriage with your strategy. So going back to this manifestor example, I would say something like, you get this burst of ideas as a manifestor, and it's important that you tune into your authority to really assess if this is a yes or a no for you, whether that's like through their spleen, their ego, and then or their emotions. And then from there, you will, talk about like, and once then you want to inform people before you, if it's a yes, or even if it's no, maybe let people know. So talk about how that kind of works together and how that leads to the alignment themes, which I'll talk about in a second, but definitely talk about how it feels in their body. I think that's really important. I think examples are good with this one too. And then the thing with authority is like some authorities need a lot of time, like an emotional authority, a self-projected authority, a lunar authority, reflector. Or if it's more immediate, like a spleen or a sacral. And then alignment themes. So let them know how this feels. I think this is also really important with projectors because success, I was at like a women's entrepreneur group last week, and one of the girls there, she does human design. And we were just kind of chatting about like, human design things. And she was like, what is, as you work with people in human design, like, what do you feel like the definition of success is? And I said so many people get it wrong with projectors and success, where they think success is like, fame, money, status, or something material, when oftentimes it's just like a successful interaction, or being able to, really make a difference, use your wisdom, the things that the projector's seeing and guiding someone. That's like really feels like success for them. So I think, this can be an important piece just to describe what this feels like. Um, talk about how strategy and authority are kind of this formula that leads to signature theme, and they're not self-theme, how that can feel. They might even, this is where a lot of examples I feel like come up. And also talk about just like how using logic and conditioning and forcing things can move them into the not self-theme. As far as reading profile, you'll want to highlight, what this means in relation to their energy type. A lot of times people get these kind of confused. Profile is like more of a personality, how you align with your purpose. Type is more so like your energy field. What the profile line means, start with the conscious, then move to unconscious, real life examples. So if you're a 4, you may have found, your job through your network, right? This is also great to talk about with purpose and just natural skills. Definition, you want to highlight how someone can get into a flow state, how they don't have to make themselves wrong for not operating like someone else. Tips for supporting their definition. Like, one of the things that really landed with me in the beginning of human design is learning I'm a split definition. I do really well if I work from a coffee shop or just like co-work with someone. Like, having energy around me feels really good. This is important to talk about with conditioning, working on teams, just working in general, relationship dynamics. Undefined centers, you'll want to talk about, the centers that are the most prominent in a current situation. So if they mention that they're burnt out, and they have like an undefined sacral or root, maybe spend some time there. Potential shadows of each of the undefined centers with real life examples, wisdom of the undefined centers, because those are places of wisdom and, some of our greatest lessons that they may have learned from their undefined centers, tools to empty out or align, and then, how their strategy and authority can lead them from shadow to wisdom. Definitely, this is important to talk about with conditioning and wisdom, right? Life's lessons, even shadows. Defined centers, you want to highlight, which centers are most in prominent in a current situation. So if they feel pressure to figure things out logically and they have a defined mind center, spend some time there. How their defined centers impact others, the potential shadows of each of their defined centers with real life examples, the wisdom of each of their defined centers, how their strategy and authority leads them from shadow to wisdom. I think this is also great with talking about purpose and their impact in the world. I talk a lot about those with like entrepreneurs. I think that's a fun place to start. Channels. So channels show up, when we're in alignment. So the goal is to make people aware of their channel so that when they do show up, they can embrace those things. So you'll want to highlight how their strategy and authority leads to this showing up. The more conscious ones reflect on which ones they feel the most aware of. So, channels can't be forced, but like, you don't learn it, then become it. I find people try to do that. How the channel may operate. So like the channel type, whether it's a projected channel, a manifested channel, generated channel, the energy of the centers on either side of the channels. I think this helps make it make sense. So, I'm oftentimes talking about like, I have gate 60 to 3. And so I'll oftentimes share, how the root center is like that pressure, not to mention the 60 to 3 is a format channel. So there's like this energy that goes up within the chart. It's connected to the sacral. So, you can kind of talk about the two centers and how the channel really links between those. So these are great when talking about purpose, gifts, or skills. As you know, reflectors don't have channels, but they can access channels through transit. So their gift is fluidity. So those are just some things to remember. And yeah. So then gates gets people into their heads more than their body. And if you can focus on channels above gates can impact us in different ways and show up effortlessly when someone is in alignment. And so the goal is just to make people aware of the most prominent gates, which are going to be the ones that are in your incarnation cross. So the sun and earth gates. So, so when reading someone's gates, you'll want to highlight, how their strategy and authority leads to this, the ones in the incarnation cross. The conscious sun is the most potent one. Other important ones are the north node, moon, maybe more conscious ones they feel more aware of. Gates can't be forced. Again, you don't learn it, then become it. Incarnation cross. So this isn't, again, something you learn and then become. Happens when living in alignment. So the goal is to make people aware of their life theme. So when they kind of notice it, they can embrace it. So you'll talk about, how their strategy and authority leads to this, the angle. So right angles, their focus is on themselves and how that impacts others. Left angles is their focus on others impacting themselves in return. The juxtaposition is that fixed life theme. Also, these are called like the right angle is the karma, or like a personal karma. The left angle is a transpersonal karma. Juxtaposition is the fixed life theme or the bonus life, right? Each of the gates, they are made up of. So I already kind of talked about that with gates. Really important for purpose. Then like digestion, obviously you want to make sure someone's working with their human design. You'll want to highlight strategy and authority, how that relates to that, how it relates to food and information, the direction of their arrow, if they have an active or passive brain, their unique digestion type, real life examples, and then maybe like practical tools. So example, cold thirst may want to allow hot foods to get to room temperature before they consume those. So just some practical tips. Strongest sense, again, strategy and authority is important first. Strongest sense is also cognition. Digestion is also determination for those of you that use more of the traditional language. But how their strategy and authority leads to that, how it relates to digesting food, and then maybe some real life examples. Now, environment, this is usually applicable at the age of 30 and beyond. So that's something to just note. I have found like, a couple parents I worked with were introducing environment to their children at a young age, and they said it really, made sense for them. So, you can just let them know that traditionally this is where it's applicable at the age of 30 and beyond, but go with what, that feels best for them. But important to, again, highlight strategy and authority. You also want to highlight that this is the second variable. Digestion is first. So that's kind of the first piece. If they are lost at digestion, I wouldn't even really move here, but again, kind of flow. The direction of the arrow, if they're an observer or observe, their unique environment, real life examples. I think this is key because we know the environments are symbolic, and I always get people who are like, okay, I live in like Kansas. Like, should I move to like a beach town because I have shores environment? And I'm like, no, you're fine. Stay there. Practical tools. So, or, again, shores too, sitting at the edge of a restaurant. If you're looking at viewer perspective, same thing that I just talked about with environment, but you'll want to highlight how environment leads to this and the other variables first, the direction if they're more focused or peripheral, or if you want to talk about the manifestation if you subscribe to that. So like manifestate or specific or non-specific manifesting style. And then, what happens if they're distracted or in transference. And like definitely remind them this is not something that should guide them. And then same goes with motivation. Everything I just said. As far as like all the pieces that lead into the fourth variable and the direction of the arrow, if they're strategic or receptive, how this relates to their mind, not actually like motivation to act. I think that's a big misconception. What happens when they're distracted or in transference, and then remind them it's not really meant to guide them. It's just something to witness. What do you do if people have contradicting pieces in their design? So this happens all the time. Like someone will be like, tribal circuitry, but then they've got like a line 2, but then they have single definition, but then they also have a collective emotional wave. Like, what does this all mean? I focus in steps on what's applicable. Like, unless they're a human design expert, I'd refrain from using all the jargon because that'll just confuse them. But I just, describe practical strengths of, tribal circuitry. You want your people to thrive. You want to be supported. You want to be safe. Then I mentioned that with the line 2, they may find themselves needing more alone time between supporting their tribe. Then with single definition, I'd maybe focus on when it comes to working with others. Maybe they enjoy, going by themselves. They're very self-sufficient. And then with the collective wave, I'd relate that to the authority piece and, how that's related to their emotions and decision-making. Ups and downs are natural. It can feel like things build up and then tumble down. Like, have you ever had that experience? And, while it may not encompass the entire design, this will allow them to understand and work with each part, even if it, is kind of contradicting. Okay, I'm gonna pause for questions. I know we're kind of getting close on time. I'm so glad you guys are loving this so far. This is so fun. Okay. How to read someone based on their human design. So, manifestors, they don't really want to be told what to do or how to do it. So like, as far as the homework piece that I mentioned, you could say like, here's some suggestions, do what feels good for you. Generators, they're going to want something to respond to. So they're going to want to see the chart. Sometimes like you can dive a little bit deeper and even see if people are visual. Do I have that in here? Oh yeah, I do. Okay. Manifesting generators, they're going to want flexibility. They want things to be interactive. Projectors are going to be really curious. They're probably going to be like, how do these things link together? They're going to want to know all the deeper layers, asking very profound questions. They want to feel seen, which regardless of any reading, like you're going to feel seen, at least I hope someone does. Reflectors are going to, want to reflect your energy back to you. So be really prepared to practice energetic hygiene beforehand. Don't run from a really busy meeting and then jump on a reading with a reflector. Like that's going to show. Now, profiles, so like line ones, they're going to want all the information. They're going to want to ask questions. They're going to care about your expertise. Line twos may recognize they may not recognize their talents until you draw them out. So it could be really fun in a session. They also may need some time to process. So I've had this experience before where I'm reading in line two, and like I mentioned that I ask for feedback after my sessions. Like this is the person that's going to get back to me like a month later with feedback because they sat with it, and then they tell me this amazing story later on. So that will happen. Line threes, they will want to experiment. So give them homework, right? Line fours, they're going to want to share human design with people in their network. They may have found you through someone they know. Line fives want to know, like, why is this useful? How they can help others with it. And line sixes will just want to integrate all the knowledge, and they're going to want to like really embody it. This is recorded, guys, so I know we're getting close on time. So sorry. Now the direction of the top left arrow, so that is the digestion arrow. So if you look at your chart, I don't know which way I'm facing. It's the top left arrow. Just go look at your chart. So if it's facing left, there's an active brain. So this will be someone who takes information in like a structured, organized way. If someone is also a quad left, this will apply. Like they're going to want visuals, systems, processes, written materials, asking questions, one thing at a time. Recalling things will be natural for them. A passive brain is going to be like, I get that. There might be like a little bit more like non-linear. You can maybe move around more. They might like more real life examples. They might definitely want like more like supplemental materials. They might be the people who are going to listen rather than, ask questions. They might just want to like soak everything in. And they may not remember the nitty-gritty details, but they'll remember the overall picture of things. And then, here based on digestion of information, so consecutive appetite, share one thing at a time, alternating, share pieces and parts as it makes sense, open taste, share what they want to learn or ask about, closed taste, share exactly what they came for, not more, unless they, ask, hot thirst, share information in a warm, I think I'm missing information, but basically share information in a warm, kind of like, just a warm energy, right? Cold thirst, cool-headed, refreshing way. You don't have to be cold, right? But calm touch, share in a soothing, calming manner, nervous touch, share in a busy way. Maybe you're like moving, talking with your hands as I do. High sound, maybe you like to have a little bit of background music, or they might like a little bit of background music. Low sound, share with maybe a soft voice, avoid background noise, keep it private. Direct light, share during the day, make sure that, you're visible, make direct eye contact. And then at night, maybe it's like more like a mood. Maybe there's a candle lit. These are just some things. Someone said, please keep going. Well, this is my favorite part of this entire lesson. So I'm glad we still have some people here. Thank you guys. We're going to quickly just buzz through this because I am over. And then I want to do Q&A because I know you guys have a million questions. And I also want to just offer, someone a spot in HDM. So, okay. So keep learning. Human design is a forever knowledge system to keep learning. Don't ever stop learning all that there is. I think that, it's important to review content and whatever training you've taken, all the books, learn about the system, follow the people you love online. There's so many amazing people doing human design now, and it's so cool to see it getting bigger and bigger. My intention, this was a slide from my course. Like my intention is for people to have everything they need in HDM, but like other approaches, teachers, books, students, or wells of knowledge, learn it all. I've taken a gazillion courses on human design, and like everything is like I just pull things from everyone. The things that I like that really resonated with me, that felt really true, like just keep learning because there's going to be things you learn that are really great from everyone. No one's better or worse either. No training is better or worse either, I think too. Keep practicing. You've heard it before. I said earlier, practice makes perfect, but I think I'm going to change this because someone said practice makes progress. And that is like way better than perfect because I'm a recovering perfectionist. So I like that. Practice makes progress. So just put that in there. Go give readings. Ask your random coworker if you can look up their chart. Invite your old friend for lunch. Tell them all about it. Obsess over you or your kids' charts. Look up celebrities, whatever. The more practice you get with the system, the more you'll learn and develop your own inquiries, which I find is kind of hard to do in the beginning. Like I mentioned that a lot of my readings in the beginning were so verbatim. Like I had my trainings pulled up, my materials printed out, and I was like, you are this based on this thing, because I didn't have it memorized. And the goal isn't to memorize it, it's to like really find your own inquiries. And you're going to find that with time through learning from a lot of different places and people, watching YouTube videos. Maybe people are like finding this YouTube video because I don't know, they search something. So really just like develop your own inquiries through your practice, embody your design. Have you ever heard people sell experiences, not things? If you want to bring human design to the world, embodying it is the best thing you can do. What does that mean? It means you've integrated it into your life. You're an expression of your own chart. You follow your strategy and authority. You guys just saw, I just ended my podcast last week because my authority told me no, and I didn't listen to it. Back in April, it was like my like time was coming up to renew with my podcast manager. And I was like, I just don't kind of feel like doing it. Like I just knew it was a no for sure. But I was like trying to use logic. Even though I do human design and I teach it, which the reminder is not every human design professional is perfect at, working with their design. But I totally had the experience where I was like, I said yes. I totally went against my authority. And, this past couple months, I've been like the most annoying person probably to work with because I never had an episode ready. I was like at the last minute dropping it to her. And so I sent her a long note. She doesn't really know a lot about human design because, she's learns through me. But I said, I honestly can't do this. Like, it's just going, like, this doesn't really light me up anymore. Even though, like, the podcast, a lot of people like it. And logically, it seems so silly. But at the end of the day, like, you know, I don't want to do it anymore. So people like want you to be an embodiment of your own design. So I feel really good too. I feel like I lost a pound or two just from saying no to that. Like, it just was weighing on me. So, yeah, and HDM, we have a lesson dedicated to that. Okay. So be authentic. Human design's a hot topic right now, which is so cool. Like I mentioned, way back when you talk about human design and people wouldn't know what you were saying. But now when you talk about it, people know what human design is. So add your own flair to the system, be yourself. No one is you. And that's the best thing about your work. Stay authentic. Your voice will go a long way and touch lots of people. If you see someone on Instagram like crushing it, like good for them. Let those be your expanders. Don't be like a dog on them because, whatever, like just stay authentic. Your people will find you and they need you because your life experiences. Here's some flares you can add. I mean, you don't even have to do this. You can just do human design. I was working with a coach for a while and she was like, you need to find your niche in human design and you need to do like couples in human design. So I did for like a month and I was like, I don't even like doing couples readings that much. So I was like, I'm just back to general human design. I don't really care. And now it's been great. That was before I did this full time. So it really worked out. But, I see lots of people combine things. Like lots of my girls do human design and astrology, NLP with human design, Reiki. I mean, anything goes, truly, whatever life experience you have. Like human design is about being a human and like how you can optimize your energy. And where do we have to optimize our energy? Literally in everything we do. So, okay. So, NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. It's like subconscious mind. And oh my gosh, Debbie, you're here. Oh my God, I just saw Debbie comment in here. Sorry, guys. I had a moment. Oh my God, and Hope's here too. Oh my gosh, so many of my students. Okay, here are some good reading habits, and then I'm going to talk about bad reading habits, and then we're almost done. So thanks for sticking around. So studying ahead and being prepared, obviously, but it's always good to just have it in here and say it. Being on time or early, not going under or over session duration unless communicated. Like a lot of times I'll be in a flow and it's like, I've got like 5 or 10 minutes left and I'll be like, do you have something right after this? And a lot of times we're like sometimes they'll say, oh yeah, I have to run to this, or they'll say, no, I have, the rest of the day. And I'm like, okay, can you stick around? Because I really want to there's just something I want to finish talking about. And so, communicate that, or I don't know if you're going to be late for whatever reason, obviously like try not to be, but of course, communicate those things, just communicate, right? Even if you're not a manifestor, communicate. Give readings in a calm, quiet space using headphones. I tell this story to my students, but I had an astrology reading one time, and I got on this reading, and this guy was literally, he was in his car, and then it was pouring down rain, got out, he was on his phone, didn't even have notes or anything, and got out and then started smoking a cigarette, like standing in the rain with an umbrella with his phone in his hand, trying to give me an astrology reading. And like to between, you and I, all 121 of you still here, I was kind of pissed because I was like, are you serious? Like, I was so looking forward to this astrology reading. And, I just felt like he didn't care, like it like was so unprofessional, like be professional. Don't do that, like obviously be authentic, but like also like people are paying to have this experience with you. And so I just like, just don't do that. That's all. That's it. Period. Point blank. Listen attentively. Don't interrupt clients. Have empathy. Hold space for people. Right. Be flexible. Moving through what the client needs. I mentioned all those structures I gave, but there's so many times I'm giving a reading, and we talked about energy type, and then all of a sudden, like, I don't know, I have to talk about like a certain channel or them being a quad right. And then we talk about that for like 30 minutes, just be flexible. Really just, you're there to help people get to their next level by working with their energy. And so whatever way you can do that is the more important thing. Maintain confidentiality. I gave a reading a couple weeks ago to like a college friend of mine who I haven't seen for years and years and years. And, I could tell at first he's a little uncomfortable because it was the first time we've talked since, a million years ago. And so I was like, hey, this is confidential. We're not, none of this goes anywhere. And so obviously, like, hopefully people know that, but at the same time, like, remind people that. Follow-up email, don't miss appointments or no shows. Stay on track with the purpose of the session. I had a reading one time that I gave, and it was one that I didn't really love that I did. And I wish I could go back in time and redo it, because the girl that I was doing a reading for, I think she was moving through a lot. She was sharing a lot with me. And, she talked so much. And I felt like in the session, she really needed to get a lot out, but we only had a little bit to dive into her human design. And if I could go back and change that, I would. And what I would do is, make sure she shared a lot, but then kind of redirected and said, like, well, let's talk about this. Let's dive into this, because the feedback she gave was like, she's like, I felt like I talked the whole time and didn't really get a lot, So make sure there's like a good balance between, being on track with the purpose of the session and also letting people share things, and, just letting them know, like, I'm going to guide you through some of these things through your chart. So, you guys are all intuitive people. You guys work in this human design. You guys all have lots of awareness of yourself, hopefully. And so you guys will be able to do this great. Be transparent about your level of expertise. This should be like highlighted. I felt like when I got into human design, I was like, I know everything about human design and I'm going to give this reading. And I remember I didn't know a lot about incarnation cross. This is probably like my, I don't know, fifth reading. It was very much in the beginning. And it was like a friend of a friend's that I was doing a session for. And she asked me about it. And I was like, oh, I think it means, like, I was like so insecure about the fact that I didn't know. I have an undefined mind, by the way. And so at one point I realized, like, I don't have to be perfect. Like, she knew I was just learning. And so I had to say, this is just the beginning. I'm just getting into this. I actually don't know a lot about that right now, but I'm going to find out for you and I will let you know later. And I think people just really respect that, as being like, and even if it's your first few readings, like your first 20 readings, when I used to do one-on-one mentorship, which is like the way I used to teach human design before I did what I do now with HDM, I remember one of my girls, she did like 20 free readings for, people on her Instagram. And that was definitely like a lot. And I think that's maybe too many for her. It was, at least, maybe it's not for you guys, but she, one of the things was, she was all like, oh, I don't know enough. And I just told her, tell people, like, you were getting started. This is your practice. You were learning. And, I think it was really great, because just her saying that, people were even more willing to support her and were just like so amazed by what she did know. And people, I think she did 20 free readings, and then people were like sending her tips, and like people were like, this is awesome, sharing about it. And that's how she really got her business going. So just some things to think about. Obviously accept and take feedback from clients with a growth mindset. Most people are going to be sweet. They spent an hour with you, but you know, sometimes things don't feel good. Like that one feedback that I got where it was like, I felt like I talked the whole time. Like that didn't really feel good for me. I probably cried because I'm sensitive. But you know, I learned from that, and that's just, it's all about learning. Respect diverse beliefs and backgrounds. Obviously, all of us are different. All of us believe different things. And so like, you know, no one's going to be you and you're not them. Human design really is like a whole part of us knowing that. And that's what we teach. So no one has to agree with you. Just move through the stuff. Bad reading habits. I mentioned some of these already, but like consuming alcohol, obviously not really like a good vibe. I feel like for a session, smoking. From my experience, I don't really like having someone like blow smoke to the camera when they're giving a astrology reading to me, but you guys might, I don't know. I would assume you wouldn't. Texting or doing other tasks, eating or chewing, you know, noisy kids, TVs, or music playing in the background. Obviously, like I know so many of you are like working stay-at-home moms, which is awesome. So you got to go with what you, how you know, operate. And so I think people are usually understanding, but you can, you know, figure that out in whatever capacity works for you. And most of the time, if people are like, if you're a parent and they're coming to you to talk about parenting and human design, like they're going to totally respect that. I'm not even a parent and I respect that so deeply. But you know, just some tips. Having someone else outside of you and the client be present to hear the reading without consent. That's why I don't think it's great to be in a coffee shop or somewhere. Like these things can be confidential. There's a lot of times where I've been like, oh, some of my friends want to do human design. I'm like, oh, come over, we'll do it together. And, you know, I've had a friend say, I just want to do it by myself. You know, it's something I want to do alone. So people, these are very private things. Poor language, slurs, hate speech, talking politics, religion, controversial topics, nudity, obviously. Charging additional money outside of what the session was priced at initially. I think that's pretty obvious. Don't be like, oh, now you owe me money. These things are all very normal, like common, you guys all have common sense, but talking about sex, drugs, alcohol in any format, and being more than, you know, 5 minutes late unless communicated prior. These are things that I hold my readers to. And so I just thought I'd share those with you. Now, sensitive topics. So there's a couple things I want to just say with this, and this is actually the last slide before I want to talk to you guys about human design mastery, because we're going to be giving away a spot, which is going to be so exciting. If something sensitive is brought up. So when people book with you, I think it's so important to have your terms and conditions laid out. Do that. You can consult with legal. You could probably find terms and conditions online. You can, you know, definitely have that in place, just basically outlining this is for educational and entertainment purposes. Obviously, we know with human design, it can change your life. It could really get you to your next level. There's so many amazing things. It could help your, you know, it could help a lot of things. But, you know, this is not a replacement for like medical advice, counseling, therapy, legal advice, anything like that. So you just want to have those things in place just because it's just important as a business owner and anything else. I have a list of outreach services or hotlines that, you know, I send to all my readers in my network, but you can look these things up. They've got ones that are international, some that are, you know, in the United States, but things like domestic violence, if they mention that, substance abuse, self-harm, mental health crises, any form of, you know, abuse, etc. It's just nice to have a hotline for some of those things. And so when you send your follow-up email, you can just, you know, mention, or in a session, you could say, you know, I'm not, you know, licensed or trained to talk about these things. Like, I'm so sorry you've gone through that. Here's, you know, a place for support that you can reach out to later, something like that. Boundary pushing or threats. Hopefully no one has any of these experiences, by the way, but you just never know when dealing with people. So, you know, things like this could be like people wanting something else to happen in a session or threatening something. You're allowed to end a session to protect yourself. And I think that's important to, you know, you can have some terms and conditions for those things, but just really making sure you say things like, you know, I have to end the session. This is like becoming, you know, uncomfortable for me and whatever. That's actually never happened to me before. So hopefully it won't to you, but I think these are just things to remember as you're working with people in a very, you know, confidential, safe container, just some things to remember so that you're protected. And yeah. There was something else I was going to say on like boundaries and, yeah, I think that's it. If it comes up, if there's anything else I think of, I'll just say it. But we are pretty much down towards the end. I know there's quite a few things that came through. Oh, you guys are so freaking sweet. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, guys. Do you have any favorite human design books you recommend? Okay, why don't I move through this and then we'll get through the questions because there's a few that came up. Oh my gosh, yeah, wow. This is just my generator motor, my sacral is so lit up right now. Okay, so I want to talk about Human Design Mastery, which is just my program to, become a reader. It's an extensive human design training and in a community to teach you the ins and outs of human design. A few of my girls are here today. We've got Debbie, Hope, we've got Crystal here. I think there was someone else maybe too. But this is a system to incorporate the knowledge into your life or your business. I mean, it's really just like a place to learn human design, no matter what level you're at. And so, in it, you learn human design, you meet a lot of human design enthusiasts, you're able to integrate, embody your design, you learn how to give human design readings. What you guys saw today is like a snippet of what we teach in there. It's a live course and a self-paced course. This is a question I get a lot. So we do 1 to 2 live rounds a year, and I'm actually about to launch my second live round of 2024 in it launches Monday, but like you guys can actually join today, which I'm going to tell you guys about in a second. So there will be 8 live teaching calls, 4 Q&A calls, and then there's also a self-paced course, pre-recorded videos and content, and a million other things you guys can dive into. We go through a lot in there. Animal charts. We do a lesson on sleeping charts and dream rave. If you guys are curious about that kind of stuff, I know I was, but also just like the basics. I mean, everything in human design we cover. We have worksheets, study materials, meditations, community, all the things. And so if any of you guys are interested, this is to do the giveaway, comment HDM in the comments. I'm going to be choosing someone who writes HDM to win. I had a name come through to me earlier today, but I haven't seen this name. So if I see that name, we'll see. But otherwise, I'm just going to kind of close my eyes and put my cursor on somewhere. But as you guys are typing that in, I just wanted to, share if it's for you. Like, human design is really practical, straightforward. You guys just got a taste of how I teach. So it's very much like today. Like these are literally like slides that I use inside my course. If you're itching to learn more about some of the stuff, someone said animal charts. Yeah, there's charts for animals, sleeping charts as well. There's a whole section on dreams. So transits, I mean, there's some of the kind of deeper things you don't hear a lot about. They're less important than the basics that we talked about, but yeah, so if you want to do human design on the side or global and career, your coach healer, I mean, all the things, you guys can read the screen. And yeah, I'd love to have you guys in there. So it's so funny. I had a like random name that came to me earlier and I was like, I wonder if this is like someone who's going to be on this call, but I'm actually not seeing this name. Maybe they were here earlier. So, I am just going to like literally close my eyes and just like scroll and see. Oh, also here's some, excuse me, student love from Sarah and Darcy. Oh, and here's like the insight on the course as well. So you get like access to me, obviously, entire self-paced course. You get the live stuff. We have over 130 students. You can get certified if you want, chance to become a reader on our site. You get 50% off a reading with me or one of our in-house readers. My students are on here today. This is a new offering that I'm going to be adding. You guys will be getting more information about that. And yeah, so I'm just going to go ahead and scroll and just like see where my cursor lands. Michaela, Bianchi. I will put this is who is the winner. Does it let me paste an image? I don't think it does. Okay, so Michaela, you are the winner. So if you could just send me, okay, I just saw your note that said, oh my God. If you can just send me a email and if you can just like send that to me right now in the chat, that would be great. Just directly to me, and I will make sure that we get you added into it. But those of you that didn't just win the randomized giveaway, we have an early bird discount going on. So you'll see social media, or if you're on my email list, that'll go on Monday, but you can join today, like it's live. So we're doing $500 off for early bird special, and that's between now and August 26th. And then it'll go back to like the normal pricing. So this is the lowest you'll be able to get it. So if you guys would like to join HDM, the code is early bird at checkout. So I will, let me actually, I'll send you guys the design of, oops, wrong thing. I'll send you guys the link to the page. So if you want to just like have it, you can see it. And then I want to also just share too, we also have other discounts. So, this has to go live, by the way, like shortly after this call. So if you try to use it within like the next 10 minutes, it might take a second, but we're going to offer 20% off a reading. You can either book with me or you can book a reading with one of our in-house readers. A couple of them are here today, so they're great. But there's tons of amazing people available. Or if you want one of my guidebooks, I know probably lots of you do reports with the Bodygraph chart. If you want to see what, like how we do them, the 20% off, you can use the code bodygraphchart. So yeah, so that is, I'm gonna take a quick picture of your email, Michaela. I just saw that you sent it to me. So that is the code you guys can use. And now let me do a Q&A. And yes, of course, make sure you follow Bodygraph Chart on Instagram. I'm on Instagram too, as the design of you. So let me go up because I saw some questions that came through that I missed before we had the HDM stuff going through. So, okay, lots of questions. Let me try and find. Will this slide deck be available? The PDF for the slide deck won't be, but this is recorded, so you'll be able to watch this on YouTube, I believe. And you can pause, and so you'll be able to read through. So you'll basically have it so you can, go through it that way. Yeah, you'll be able to listen to it again. I saw that question come through from, I think, Genevieve. Let's see what other questions are in the chat here. Let's see. I'm actually gonna like stop sharing, maybe. Stop share. That way I can just see you guys and see this chat a little bit more clear. No, I don't want to share anymore. Okay. Thank you guys. Your comments are just so sweet. I really appreciate these. It means so much to me, truly. Someone said, how do you combine Reiki? I'm not trained in Reiki, so I don't know how people fully combine it. There's just so many ways you can combine human design with other things. I think with Reiki, it'd probably have a lot to do with the energy centers. Oh my gosh, all of your guys' designs. Oh, I've got reflectors in here. Oh my God, quite a few. How fun. At what point in the journey would you recommend creating a business? Up to you, I think there's like I don't know that it's a law, but I think in my area, the general kind of consensus is if you've made over $500 doing something, like technically you have to like report that to the IRS in the States. So I think that's what I did. I think once I got to like $600, I was like, maybe I should create an LLC. So that's what I did, but totally up to you. And maybe like check with your laws and things. I'm not fully sure. Not tax advice, not a legal professional. So okay, just want to make sure I'm getting everyone's questions. So let me just go back down. We got through all of that. Is the price with or without tax? I don't know if mine charges tax. I just use whatever, like use Acuity to book readings. And so maybe there is tax. I actually don't know. Oh, Debbie just said, I realized my comments were going directly to you instead of everyone. Love that. Any advice for a reflector to find your purpose? I would dive into your incarnation cross, and I would make sure that you spend a lot of time around people and environments that feel really good for you, because I think that'll help you find purpose the more that you're around people that make you feel really good. Recommendations on human design books. The definitive book of human design, I think, is great. I love Rachel, I think it's Lieberman. She's Pure Generators. I just picked up her book. Actually, a local bookstore near me had it. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's a human design book. And it's The Modern Guide to Human Design. Awesome book. Highly recommend. It's like the definitive book of human design, but like practical. So I really like it. I also recommend the Gene Keys book by Richard Rudd, which Gene Keys is like a spin-off of human design. I'm sure you guys know that, but do you do readings on Zoom video or send video recordings? I do Zoom video. I, in the past, did recordings and I don't personally like it just because I don't know, like there's something about like there's an energy exchange happening here, even though like we're virtual, like it doesn't feel good for me to sit for an hour and be like, and this is your chart and this is because I don't know how they relate. So you could do that. And I did that for a while when I didn't have time to, you know, meet with people. But yeah, totally what works for you. Pricing, I don't know if there was a call about pricing or not. Pricing is totally dependent. I charge $444 for a session, which I know is steep for a lot of people, but it started at like $30, $60, and I moved up to that the more booked out I got. So there's like when it comes to pricing, it's super personal, like and definitely with whatever your nervous system can handle. It totally just depends on what feels good for you. The books were The Definitive Book of Human Design by Linda Bunnell and Ra Aruhu. So that's kind of like the best book, I would say. The second is The Modern Guide to Human Design by Rachel Lieberman, who is Pure Generators on Instagram. And then Gene Keys by Richard Rudd are great if you want to dive into like the gates and the Gene Keys format, which I think is, I definitely recommend. Yeah, Victoria Gonzalez said like pretty vital, and I think as well. My Instagram is The Design of You. So I think I'll answer one more question after that, but I will go ahead too and I'll drop my page. So if you wanna, wanna follow along. I am on Instagram all the time. I'm sharing tips and things every single day. So would love to connect with you guys there. That's probably the best way to find me. Okay. Oh, you guys are so dang sweet. Okay, I think that's actually all of the questions. So thank you guys for this time. Thank you, Bodygraph Chart. It's 444 where I'm at right now, so that's pretty cool. Thank you guys so much for just spending your evening, morning, wherever you are with me. And I hope that you guys have amazing human design readings moving forward. I hope you guys change lives. I think that's the whole reason why we do this. And so, keep doing you. And yeah, much love to what Bodygraph Chart has built and just everything. So this has been awesome. And if you're catching this on YouTube, I hope that we can stay connected and I get to know you at some point. I hope that you guys join HDM. Code's early bird, $500 off, really take advantage. So yeah. All right. I'll see you guys later. Bye.